Are 3D printed LEGO compatible pieces something that you're interested in? How about LEGO cars? Welcome to the Study Garage, and if so, 3D Supercar Bricks is someone with a really interesting catalog of LEGO instructions and 3D printed pieces with some of the most detailed mocks of some of the most intricately designed hypercars from around the world. And after 3 months of waiting on a pick-a-brick order and after several Bricklink orders for retired pieces, more on that later, I finally have everything I need to build 3D Supercar Bricks, Bugatti Veyron, and Koenigsegg Gemera. Everything that is except one piece for the Gemera, and it's quite a vital piece for the overall design, so while I wait on that, we'll start with the Bugatti, which I'm cool with because I'm way more of a Bugatti fanboy. And real quick, if you like building LEGO cars, definitely check out this brick car t-shirt that I made, which is like a LEGO brick if it was a car. By far the drippiest shirt in the brick building scene, and this beautiful sewn emblem t-shirt can be yours for just $23. The instructions are a digital download and look pretty similar to LEGO instructions, but instead of pieces being outlined as they're placed, here we have the pieces being placed normally rendered in, with the rest of the model being sort of shaded out as if the opacity was turned down. But starting out, the build was pretty much identical to a LEGO Icon or Creator Expert scale car, or if you're old enough, even closer to the Racer scale cars. The designs and building techniques all throughout are quite impressive for this scale, with a couple of highlights before 3D printed pieces are ever even used. For example, the way these 1x1 studs connect together and sit flush on this side panel, and the way that these 1x1 brackets are turned a little bit cleverly next to some Dorito tiles for space. It isn't long though before the first 3D printed piece is introduced, which is the car's iconic horseshoe grille, which is cleverly completed with a robot arm at its base. But what's really impressive is how this thing is mounted, because it involves a combination of modified 1x1 bricks, tubes, and minifig hands. After that though, it's back to business with normal LEGO pieces, and things escalate pretty quickly because soon I was building the headlights for the Bugatti. There were some really clever building techniques in order to create their unique shape, and they look absolutely amazing in person. But not long after the headlights and some brief interior work, the next 3D printed pieces were needed, and these were by far some of the most important 3D printed pieces because they're used to build the Bugatti Veyron hood and capture its V-like shape. I feel like this piece takes inspiration from the triangle-like Technic pieces on bigger scale cars, but takes it up a notch by not needing pin mounting points and also supplying an extra stud inside on its side in order to place the cheese wedge to get the full rounded off look. In my opinion, this is the perfect representation of the 3D Supercar Bricks concept, which is to only use 3D printed pieces to solve problems that are just simply too complicated or impossible to achieve at certain scales. I will admit though, I wish that these could be painted glossy black to match the LEGO around them. But following this is some more body panel work with normal LEGO until you get to the back bumper where the next 3D printed piece is needed, which are these red rings that are used to create the tail lights. 1x1 clear studs are placed inside of these. There is a right and wrong way to place them in order for these to sit flush in between the stud and the modified tile. And while they do look good, they do bulge out quite a bit as if the Bugatti taillights are starting to expand from air placed inside of them. Now, the next 3D printed piece that was used was a little nerve-wracking at first because they're these L-like pieces, which are reminiscent to a real LEGO piece, except they sit completely flat. And at first, I was really concerned about these pieces because they weren't locking in. But once more bricks were introduced and built on top, their connection did become way stronger. And if you're wondering what exactly they're being used for, it's the trim for the body panels around the engine bay. And sitting just behind the engine bay is another 3D printed piece, which is the spoiler frame or base. This is then integrated into an engine build and given a Technic-like function, which I'll showcase once we complete the car. But after just a few more finishing details, the final 3D printed pieces that are used are the Veyron-inspired wheels. And once these are on, just like that, you have a completed Bugatti Veyron by 3D Supercar Bricks. And boy, does this final build look amazing. The proportions from the front grille through the doors are pretty much a perfect LEGO interpretation of the Veyron. The rear half also looks great and does what I believe is the best it can to capture one of the most complex yet simple car shapes ever created. And to be fair, I am one who believes that LEGO does a better job at capturing harsh, sharp, and sudden angles than it does smooth, flowing, curvy angles. But nevertheless, this Bugatti Veyron by 3D Supercar Bricks looks like it could be an official LEGO Creator Expert or Icon set, and it's comparable in size to the LEGO Ferrari F40 and Lamborghini Gallardo. It also features a couple of functions like the active arrow rear spoiler, which you can keep down or up, and the opening doors, which reveal a beautiful tan interior, in which I made one modification, which was putting one center dial on the dash instead of the double. And sitting just behind the interior, I personally love the way that the W16 has its engine covers tucked neatly between the two massive air intakes. Altogether, this is a fantastic LEGO Bugatti Veyron and is definitely going in the center display of my collection. But we're not done yet, because with the Bugatti complete, now it's time for the Koenigsegg Gemera. And thank the Lord, while I was building the Bugatti, these retired inspired pieces finally arrived, and you'll see later why I said these are pretty vital for the overall design. And by the way, this car actually has more custom 3D printed pieces for it than the Bugatti, so let's go ahead and dive in and see what all of these are used for. Once again, starting out, the build was very similar to the Bugatti and other LEGO cars of this scale, but this time it felt a little bit more high-end, with every piece feeling like it was thought out and placed very meticulously. This build is also very formulaic in a way that makes the whole car feel very rewarding to assemble, but this also means that details on the exterior build are constantly being added, so instead of spoiling the car little by little, I'll just go ahead and showcase each 3D printed piece as they're placed and how they're implemented, so that we can see the Gemera in all of its glory once it's done. And this works out because the first 3D printed piece comes fairly soon in these, which I don't even know how to describe them other than two tiles making a plus sign. But they're used to help mount the back bumper, although they do need a little finesse to get just right. Going to the opposite end of the car though, the next piece are these shark-like fins with little arrow fins on them, which are used to be the base of the front bumper. And actually staying on this piece, you place the next piece, which are these metal-like tube beads, which are actually used as studs to connect a cheese wedge to this bumper piece. But following this, the next 3D printed piece is actually really familiar because they're just recolored left and right 1x2 angled bows used to create the headlights, and they're not necessarily the next 3D printed piece used, but these are also used later in the car as the taillights. But now getting back in order of use, we have these, and I don't even know what to call these shapes other than they look exactly like a country. But they're used for the headlight housing, and they do look really clean and precise on the actual car. Following the country-shaped pieces though are these 1x2 plates with studs on the side, and if these look familiar, go ahead and drop a comment on where you've seen these before, because I'll definitely mention where I've seen them before later on in this video. But these are used on the hood to get a clean flat surface with these tiles on the front. But getting back to original pieces, we have these gray pieces, which are used as small left and right details on the doors. But they're not the only 3D printed piece on the doors, because the doors also get these window linings, which are the piece I held up at the beginning of the video. And just underneath the door is another 3D printed piece, which are these long 1x16 beams that actually have a slant to them, and this little arrow fin, they're the side skirts. And once again, you close this build out with 3D printed wheels that match the real Gemeras. But one 3D printed piece that I skipped over because honestly it needs to be showcased on the complete car was the windshield. And here it is. This is the best quality 3D printed piece on both cars by a long shot. But voila, the completed Koenigsegg Gemera by 3D Supercar Bricks. This car is packed full of some really fun features, including an openable hood, an openable trunk, technically the dihedro synchro helix doors, but check this out, in the front there's one bag, and in the trunk there's 1, 2, 3, 4 bags. For 5 bags in total, you could take the whole family plus one. And the details don't end there, because inside the Koenigsegg is 4 seats and a dual screen setup like the real Gemera. And when you open the trunk, you can see the exposed engine bay, which has that like tool crossbeam thing. That is just so cool. This model is just so much fun to build, and it looks absolutely amazing once it's done. There was one upgrade though that I had to make, and that was on the trunk. I switched out these 2x2 circles for these rocker plates because the 2x2 circles caused the back 2x3 tile to keep falling off. But other than that, pretty much a perfect model. But now with both cars finished, I want to focus a little more on the 3D printed piece aspect of these builds and my personal opinions on them. To start out, I want to say I think this concept is a really smart idea for really passionate LEGO creators to get more precise, bespoke, unique, and detailed mocks. Custom pieces like the Bugatti's hood, the Koenigsegg's windows, headlight housing, aero kit, and both cars' wheels are such a brilliant and fun way to turn LEGO models up a notch. Although when it comes to the Bugatti, I have to admit everything except the angled pieces used for the hood doesn't seem like it would be impossible to find different solutions for, especially if you adjusted the scale of the car ever so slightly. For example, the taillights are a pretty good solution, but if the car was just a bit bigger with a scale closer to the Porsche, Camaro, Mustang, or Countach, you'd probably be able to get away with this setup for the taillights, which are 2 normal LEGO pieces, but they are a little bit too big for this Bugatti. Then, for these really flat pieces used for the trim around the engine bay, I feel like if you were to mount the back bumper in a different way somehow, you wouldn't need these pieces to be so flat. The spoiler also works perfectly for this scale, but it wouldn't be impossible to create a base like this using these normal LEGO pieces. But again, for this scale, you really wouldn't be able to get the spoiler to sit flush the way this one does and be so skinny. Then finally, I don't know if there's a total need for the horseshoe grille other than getting the accomplished color. And the only reason I say that is because this is a 5M tube with a robot arm at the base, and it has almost the exact same footprint as the 3D printed printed piece. However, while I was bending this to make the shape, I had to be very careful not to make a crease. And for some reason, it doesn't look totally symmetrical, so in that respect, I appreciate the 3D printed piece. However, on the Gemera, the 3D printed pieces did seem much more bespoke, with a couple being a little more, should I say, inspired. And what I mean by that is these black pieces are almost an exact copy of this Mega Block piece, just with rounded off corners. And like I said earlier, these headlights and taillights are both real Lego pieces that are just recolored. And real quick, before we wrap this up, I want to mention the fact that retired pieces to me should be a no-no. First off, they were really hard to find. I had to buy from several different people from several different countries and pay that different shipping. And on top of that, the older the piece, the harder to find with a finite amount. So for anyone out there who wants to use a retired piece in their build, make sure it's one that you can find, because the ones used for the hood on the Gemera were impossible to find. I had to buy each half separately from 2 separate people. Not only that, if you're gonna use retired pieces, make sure they're absolutely needed, because this retired piece right here, you don't even need for the Bugatti roof, because it's used right here in the roof, and it's easily replaced by some 1x2 or 1x3 circular plates. Nevertheless though, I do enjoy and respect this concept of creating custom solutions for unique and complicated applications, and I'm personally excited to see how 3D Supercar Bricks business evolves over time, with hopefully more beautiful models on the way featuring some truly special 3D printed enhancements. I personally may find myself buying another one of these models in the future because I did thoroughly enjoy the entire process. But with that, stay creative, peace.